Selecting a house is very much like going grocery shopping. There's so many different variables. There's a product to suit every imaginable taste. It just really depends on what your budget is, what you actually like and dislike, what your needs and wants are, what your time frames are, whether you want a pre-prepared meal or whether you're willing to buy all the ingredients and put it all together yourself. Look, essentially, it's going to be very similar factors that will determine what your home actually looks like. And as everyone is an individual, the characteristics of your first purchase could vary widely from one person to another. To personalize it for you, let's commence with a bit of a visualization exercise. The power of imagination is a beautiful tool. Alice laughed. "There's no use trying," she said. "One can't believe in possible things." "I dare say you haven't had much practice," said the Queen. "When I was younger, I always did it for half an hour every day. Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." That was a quote from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. And to also quote the Buddha, all that we are is a result of what we have thought. So, look, imagination is a particularly powerful tool, and I want to use imagination because I want you to imagine what your first home must look like. Much like I did in dreaming of what my home was going to be, it was going to be a place that was filled with natural light, that was well appointed, and was somewhere that I could call my own. I visualized what it would be like to walk in through that front door. And crazy as it sounds, but when I did actually walk through that home for the inspection, I knew it was it. I had imagined this place and I had created this journey. So let's take some inspiration from Alice in Wonderland. And I want to start by getting you to close your eyes and taking a couple of deep breaths because we're going to start on a visualization exercise here. Okay, so we're feeling Buddha, we're feeling Alice. So start by closing your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths. Now let me ask you this. If I could wave my magical wand and create the ideal first home, what would it look like? Take your time and think about this and write it down. Now hopefully by now you've got something on paper, and I want you to reread what you have written. And I want you to close your eyes again and picture what it looks like. What is the colour scheme? Where is the natural light coming in? What does vegging out on the couch actually look like? All these factors are really important to visualize. You want to picture each of the different aspects because I want those images to burn into your imagination. Keeping this little dream safely tucked away in your inner sanctum is worthwhile, as your gut will instinctively shout out when you found the right place. Just as it did for myself when I walked through that property in St. Lucia, I instinctively knew because I had already visualized this house. I had already visualized what it was going to be and what I was going to create. So let's move on. Now we've visualized what the property physically looks like. There's a couple of things that are particularly important to take into consideration, much away from the physical dimensions and aesthetically pleasing characteristics that I hope that you have dreamt up. Now, for me, I'm a bricks and mortar type of guy. It's probably the Italian coming out of me and my love affair with concrete. Now, this might not be the best suited for everyone, and others' preferences may not sit well with me either. Importantly, no matter what your preferences are, consideration should absolutely be given to the nearby amenities, as it will have a big influence in your ultimate decision, the potential growth of the property, and the general feel for the place. So get your pens out because I want you to consider these factors. The all-important factor is the location. It's the age-old saying, location, location, location. You can change any number of physical aspects of the actual property, but you can't change where it's actually located. Land is the aspect that appreciates in value, whereas the actual dwelling will always depreciate in value. So therefore, consider what the walk score. Consider how far it is to transportation links, to the bus, to the ferry, to the train, to the taxi terminal, to highway links, to express tunnels. Good transport links can have a significant impact on pricing and future growth prospects. Where are the shops? Where are the urban community areas? Maybe you don't have a lot of money to splash around after you bought your new or your first home. Window shopping is a good time killer. Plus, who wants to drive 30 minutes to fetch milk and bread? Where are the parks? Where are the community areas? These are things that people consider. Young families need to know that there's a park nearby to get the kids out of the house during witching hour. Where are the local schools? What's the catchment area like if you've got a few nippers? Or, if you're planning a family, it could well be worthwhile checking out the neighbourhood for options. Likewise for daycare centres. These aspects also have a significant impact on the actual value of a property. A good local school within an area that ranks highly within the test scores will almost certainly improve the value of the nearby property. Again, light transportation, good schools, good community areas, good shops nearby, good transport links, all have an impact on attracting a bit of a premium for pricing. Since we're talking about education and school and daycare centres, it's always good to bear in mind that people have changing needs. Stuff happens. Your needs are obviously going to change and grow. Nothing is really ever set in stone. Therefore, consider, if there's going to be enough room for your expanding family. If there is a change in jobs, how is that going to affect you? What's your commute going to be like? Remember, it's called a first home for a reason, though. It doesn't have to fit every purpose that could eventuate in your future. However, it does have to be right for you at this point in time now. So now let's move on and now let's discuss in some detail what are the specific options that are going to be available to you. So when it comes to actually to decide on what options are available to you, they can be broken down, I believe, into three very broad areas. First of which is to buy something existing, whether that be a detached house or a detached dwelling, or whether that be an existing unit or townhouse. The second aspect is to look at buying something off the plan. That could be a house and land package, that could be a unit, it could be a townhouse as well. And the last factor, or option number 3, is DIY, do it yourself. Acquire the land yourself. Acquire the builder and set about trying to build your own little castle. These are the 3 broad factors in terms of the options that would be available to you as a home buyer. Now, depending on your circumstances, all of these can be absolutely fine choices. With each of these options, though, consideration should absolutely be given to the following. You need to know where you're buying, and you need to understand the dynamics of the location. What has the price growth in the region been over the past 10 years or so? What's access to the amenities and planned infrastructure developments? What could their potential effects be on your investment? You need to pay attention to how many developments are actually planned for the area, as a lot of apartments that are coming into the market all at the same time could perhaps lead to an oversupply and a decline in price growth. You need to give some consideration to the zoning areas and any potential building restrictions. What do the council or the government actually have in store for future infrastructure projects? You don't want to find that your home will be backing onto a major arterial road in the next few years. Make sure if you're buying an existing property to absolutely get building inspections done. Get them done, and also don't freak out if it's a bad one either. Inspectors will always err on the side of caution, largely to indemnify themselves. Therefore, carefully weigh up each of the variables, as defects could also lead to a tool for you to go back to the negotiation table. Also, on the flip side of that, if you don't want to be bedazzled. You don't want to look at everything through rose-coloured glasses either. So, pay very close attention to the building inspection report and seek further expert advice to ensure that you get any concerns clarified in further detail. You also have to think about what's the neighbourhood like. How much noise is there? Are there dogs barking? Is there lots of passing traffic? Is the nearby park too noisy in the afternoons with school children, perhaps? Where are the amenities? Where are the schools? What's it like at different times of the day? Where does the sunlight come in? What's the traffic like in the afternoons? Do people use the back street as a shortcut between major roads? Insurance is another aspect to watch here in Queensland. Do you live in a floodplain? Not only will it really suck when it floods, but your insurance premiums are going to go through the roof. So get searches done through your conveyancing report. Find out what it's like. You may find that you may not even be able to insure the property. Insurance is highly recommended. Always ensure that you get insurance at least as a minimum to the replacement value of that property. Now we're going to cover these factors in a bit more detail in the coming webinar. So let's move on and let's look at existing homes. And let's walk through what the pros and cons are going to be in that style of arrangement. Okay, so let's start by going through the pros and cons if you were to buy an existing house. Firstly, pro. You get selection, you get to compare. I think they're pretty key factors when you are actually looking at existing homes from a benefits perspective. They're already physically present, meaning that you can actually touch them, they can be seen, you can use your imagination and let it run wild in terms of what your magical wands could actually do to spruce a place up to your liking. Existing homes are obviously going to be in well-developed areas, meaning that there's necessary amenities close by. Being established also means that it's going to tend to favour residents that are close to major urban areas as well, with most experiencing strong demand for good capital growth prospects as well. An aspect that could work against existing housing is that they could be often are older. They could be in need of maintenance and repairs, and that should be expected. This could actually be looked as something that's an advantage and a disadvantage because it gives you the actual chance to tailor your home to your liking and perhaps even help, at the negotiation table as well. Disadvantage, of course, will include the expenditure outlay to rectify those aging issues down the track. I would strongly recommend to get building inspection reports to uncover any faults or defects to these structures. They are undoubtedly worth doing in order to make an informed decision. Also, if you choose to go down an extensive remodelling process, you have to ensure that the appropriate approvals are in place and you need to consider the timelines involved as well. Another thing that works against existing property is competition. There's plenty of competition out there for quality existing homes in good locations. They go quickly and they are normally priced at a premium as well. A benefit though is that, whilst there is plenty of competition out there, you can take the time to actually source and secure the ideal place for you. It's realistically also the path of least resistance in that once the contract is signed, settled, and the transfer of titles can actually be achieved in 30 days. This means that you'll be in your home sooner. Patience in the search phase could certainly pay handsome dividends for you in the long run. Another consideration that you need to be mindful of is that if you're a first home buyer and you are looking at existing homes, you may actually be precluding yourself from the first home buyer's grant. Within some states of Australia, the first home owner's grant is only available on newly constructed properties. This means that if you do pursue an existing property, you could well forfeit that grant. But look, be mindful that you need to be working at your own pace and decide whether or not it's the right time for you. And it will certainly favour you when you make the right decision, because you'll certainly know it when you see it. Now, if you're looking at buying an existing unit or perhaps a townhouse, look, there's some good benefits to it. Again, you're going to be buying in well-established areas, so major facilities will be close, and you could have some luxury when it comes to transportation routes as well. But look, a big disadvantage to it is around the community living aspect because of the community costs. Your contribution to the building upkeep can be expensive, and it's another additional cost on top of your rates and utilities that you're going to have to consider. An overly active body corporate can either be great, or it also could be incredibly annoying. The two aspects you'll be contributing to are basically the administrative fund and the sinking fund. Now, the administration fund covers the recurring costs of the building, like electricity, insurance, cleaning, gardening fees, things such as that. Whereas the sinking fund is for irregular costs, like major building improvements that could take place, maybe the lift upgrade or painting and construction activities that would be covered by the sinking fund. The levies paid each year will be agreed upon at the body corporate annual general meeting. Work proposed through the use of the sinking fund will increase the levies for improvements that need to be voted on, and a majority outcome will need to be achieved in order to influence that decision. Some major unforeseen repairs may arise during the year, and it could be necessary to have to make a considerable outlay. Now, some general considerations to be mindful of when you're buying an existing property is to actually choose a property that is individually metered and billed separately. I don't think it's particularly fair when you pay the same amount of water and gas as a single individual compared to the four-person family a few floors up. Now, newer buildings will all tend to be individually metered, but it's an aspect to watch out for within older complexes. Secondly, look, where the body corporate is established, take the time to do the searches and get the lowdown of what's been happening in this community of 3 dozen or so people. Having a strata inspection report completed should cover this off. I highly recommend this is done. You should also obtain a copy of the bylaws as well. Otherwise, you could end up finding that your puppy may not be allowed to come live with you. Body corporate fees. Now, like I said, they're going to come every quarter, so don't forget about them. Money contributed will hopefully keep the property in a good condition, as well as cover the insurance and the administration costs. I would also suggest to check the boundaries of the property. It's important to find out where your property actually starts and finishes before the common areas actually start. In older buildings as well, look, there could be the risk of asbestos as well. And you also need to think, if the building is older, will it be able to handle 21st century technology? Think how hard it may be to connect the NBN or Foxtel, for example. And finally, the age-old saying again, location, location, location. Hunt for areas that have height restrictions, as it could prevent a 100-unit development going up next door. The land is what is worth the value. And you own a piece of that land. So owning 1 unit in 10 is much better than owning 1 unit in 100, particularly if it's the same size block. So go for appeal and don't choose something that'll look at a brick wall. Okay, so let's move on. Let's look at the pros and cons of buying off the plan, whether that be for a unit, a townhouse, or a separate dwelling. So I guess that the big benefit of new development releases is that they are quite often priced at a lower entry point. And it's intentionally done so in order to basically draw the punters in and help secure the project's future, meaning that the developer will be able to complete the project as they've secured the upfront dollars in order to make it possible. Now, getting involved in this stage could well be worth your while because of good pricing. because it gives you the opportunity to build some equity within the property as well. You can lock the property in without having to settle for an extended period of time. Capital growth in that period could make that deposit quite valuable. But remember, prices always don't go up, so choose wisely. And always read the detail, particularly around the sunset clauses within your contract. Have it read over by a legal professional before you sign anywhere. There's been a number of cases more recently where developers have reneged on their contracts and exercised their sunset clause. So be mindful of that and look into what you're actually signing. Another big benefit of off-the-plan developments is that it gives you time. It gives you time for a longer settlement. It allows you to take stock and work towards something and secure additional funds. Another big incentive could be that the government chips in. You know, there could be stamp duty concessions available on the new building and additional money in the pot with first home owners grants as well. Getting in early will also allow you to cherry pick from the best development options. Obviously, there's some great benefits to be had with off-the-plan developments, but they're complex stuff. So I would recommend to do the following checks as a minimum. So get your pens out. It's pretty important that when you're buying off the plan that you go with a reputable developer. Be sure to check out their past work. Vet them through feedback channels perhaps. Do license checks. Check out previous disciplinary actions. If your research turns up anything concerning, maybe you should reconsider. I think it's very important that you gain an understanding of their financial situation, because if they go bust, it could mean your unfinished project and your deposit tied up in abyss for a long time. Another thing to consider is that getting finance can sometimes be a little tougher in this scenario. Lenders may recap the LVR, or they may require later approval on completion. So choose wisely, visualize the look and feel, and get advice on the paperwork. Another thing to consider is that what you actually visualize and what eventuates could actually be quite different. So consider your favorite book and the results of that book after it's made into a movie, perhaps. It has all the bits and bobs, but it just wasn't quite right. And you really have to consider whether or not the numbers will actually stack up as well, how likely the developer or the builder is actually going to be able to deliver against their promises, and whether contractually it's going to be in your favour. Some more things that you need to consider if you're going to be looking at buying off the plan, and one of which is that developers are basically going to be promising you that you're buying tomorrow's real estate for today's prices. And this could certainly be the case, but it's also possible for it not to be. To truly nail buying off the plan, the key is to understand every aspect of the contract prior to signing. Therefore, I really strongly suggest that you seek professional legal advice before entering into any off-the-plan contract, or any contract for that matter. So to cover the points off, look, I would recommend that you get it reviewed by the lawyer, you determine the financial details, particularly what the commitments are, and what would happen if the project was to run over time. If it does have a display house or a unit, it could well be worthwhile having an architect review the property to give you a more accurate assessment of what you're actually buying. Make sure everything is detailed into the contract, right down to the appliances and the fittings and fixture types. Be sure to question if there's any discrepancy on what you receive and what has been contractually committed to. Another point to consider is binding strata title contracts in place. Again, have these reviewed by a lawyer to ensure fair terms have been agreed. Another point is new developments in in-demand areas will often be heavily marketed and attract a premium. This marketing will only be added to the cost of your property. So question marketing that offers rental guarantees, because it could be a signal that the developer feels that there could be an oversupply, hence pushing down the value. Costs are built into prices, so evaluate any contractual aspect that could draw you into additional expense requirements. Other factors to also consider before signing on the bottom line, again, to bring it up, the location. What's the noise like in the area? What's new in the suburb? Is the necessary infrastructure in place? How would the building look and feel several years down the track? There are important things that you need to visualize. Talking of visualization, it's important to try and make a comparison with what your apartment could look like once it's completed. See if you can find something that is very similar to what you're considering to buy. If you're looking at buying an 80 square metre apartment off the plan that has 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, separate lounge, kitchen, it's pretty likely to be quite a pokey space, but it could be well suitable. You should visualise it. Think about where your personal belongings are going to be able to fit in. Also ask if you can actually customise it to get it to your exact liking, and see if you can find something that's comparable. Another important factor is that you have to do the checks to determine whether the developer has all the necessary local council approvals already in place. I would strongly suggest to have a contingency plan as well, and finances obviously need to be planned accordingly. Valuations will be required by the bank upon completion of the build. If the valuation is lower than the contract price, you will need a backup plan to cover this discrepancy within the loan to value ratio. Another consideration, where are you planning to live while the house or unit is actually getting built? What if the property isn't completed on time? What are you going to do? Can you afford to continue paying money into rent? Stamp duty and other concessions may also be available in your state, so make sure you complete the necessary checks and get every cent that you're entitled to. It's great to have time on your side, so use it properly, save the money. Procrastinating and delaying budgeting will only hurt you in the long term when it comes to finalise the terms. And I strongly suggest to question everything and ensure all aspects of the contract that you are actually entering into. So to recap on the key points about buying off the plan, first and foremost, get professional legal advice. Know your costs back to front. Appreciate the size of the property that's being developed and give some really strong consideration to its actual location. It's very important that you're able to navigate the approvals very closely and have a contingency plan. Things can go wrong in this scenario, so have a backup plan. It's very important to do so. DIY. Well, if you're going down this route, you're certainly a brave soul, particularly if you have very limited or no experience in doing so. There's a number of aspects that can be particularly challenging, but also particularly rewarding as well. There's a lot of things that you really need to give some serious consideration to. So, you've gone out, perhaps you've searched high and low, and you just feel that you can't find something that's truly you. I guess the big attraction of building is that you actually have the opportunity to create something that is going to be fit for purpose against your needs, something you feel that can perhaps become an extension of yourself. Look, I guess the DIY or building yourself really begins with the sourcing and the procurement of the land. Next comes getting plans drawn up and getting them through the local council building process. There is also the potential to have delays at each and every stage. Budget blowouts are particularly common as well. The cost of building a home are generally fraught with unaccounted for expenses. Fittings, fixtures, gardening, and some other on costs may not actually be included in the contracts that you have with your builder. So be very mindful of what the true cost of completion will be. Another aspect is that you won't actually receive the first home buyer's grant in Queensland if you have only bought the land. A comprehensive building contract will be required in order to claim your grant. It's very important that you remember that. So consider 4 points before you go out and decide to build your dream house, as these could have a huge impact on the total cost of the build. You have to think of the cost of the land and the landscape. You have to think of the overall size. Give consideration to the interior and exterior finishes, and give some consideration to the amenities or the creature comforts of your home. Blocks can often be priced almost the same in new house land releases. Some with slightly higher costs, usually associated with perhaps a larger or a more level block. However, construction costs can vary significantly due to the slope, or odd-shaped blocks can have a real big impact on cost because of the preparation of the groundwork required prior to construction activities. Ideally, the house should sit and suit the block, as opposed to forcing a house plan on a block that really isn't fit for purpose. When choosing a block of land, you want to ensure that it is zoned for residential purposes and that there aren't restrictions in terms of easements, perhaps, which could actually cause a headache or two when the plans are getting approved. Drainage and fire protection are also important aspects to factor in. Smaller blocks are likely to mean higher density housing as well, which could impact on privacy and the scenery, I guess, that you're hoping to create. Now, the only thing that I can say for certain is nothing is certain when it comes to price of building your new home. And I think this is the most important factor that you need to take into consideration. So let's go through what some of these costs are going to look like for you. The following aspects that I'm going to cover off are very much rules of thumb. This is to purely act as a guide, because depending on the location, the block that you selected, the type of design that you are using, the type of exterior and interior finishes that you have, these costs could vary very significantly. But look, if you're looking at producing somewhat of an average style dwelling, I think it would be fair to say that you need to probably be pricing in around about $1,200 to $1,700 per square metre. I think that's probably a fair price range to give you an idea of the size of the house that you perhaps could afford to build. Now, the larger the home, obviously the cheaper it could be from a square metre perspective as well. Now, it's cheaper to build a single-storey home than it is to build a double-storey home. It's also cheaper to build on a flat block than it is to build on a sloping block. Now, the type of soil that you're building on can really add thousands of dollars to the costs. So classifications of soil go from A being the best to E being the worst, or being E being that a landslide is imminent at any point in time. And sites are going to be basically a combination of dirt and rock and have very little ground movement. That's an A site, and that's what you want to build on. Just because a builder is more expensive as well doesn't necessarily mean that they're a better builder. The more expensive the builder, or the builds, I guess, the more expenses that they probably have within their own businesses to pay for administrative houses or transportation vehicles or warehousing, for example, and they're going to be charging a premium because they're putting their brand out there and they have pretty high overheads that they need to account for. On the flip side, there are builders that are cheap and nasty as well, and you want to stay well clear from them as well. The level of inclusions that you select can also add tens of thousands of dollars to the cost of your build, so be very mindful of that. Now, most builders will not include a driveway. A driveway will cost probably between $7,000 to $10,000. They won't include landscaping, which could be anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 or more, depending on what you're looking for. Fencing could cost between $3,000 to $7,000, depending on how big the block is. Carpets and tiles, they won't be included either, and they could run into the thousands. Blinds for you, or curtains, again, could run into the thousands. Site engineering and basic costs, that won't be included either, and look, that'll probably cost around about $10,000 as well. So be sure to factor those costs in, because that's probably, maybe another $30,000 to $50,000 depending on the build and what you're hoping to achieve, just to actually complete the project. Look, it's also fair to assume that you probably can negotiate a discount on any quote if you're prepared to move quickly as well. And those discounts could range from a couple of percent or more. You can often negotiate a discount if you're going to build more than one home with the same builder as well. So if you're looking and pretty keen on property development, I'm sure that there's the opportunity to see if you can broker a deal. And look, make sure your contract is a fixed price contract before you sign. You don't want any nasty surprises at the end. Also, each time you make a change to your contract, change to the design or the inclusions after you sign the contract, you're going to be charged for it as well. Another thing to consider, particularly around the location of your property, and if you go for maybe cheaper developments on the outer city fringes, you have to think that there's going to be higher transportation costs associated with that as well. And, you also have to think about the daily commute and what that is going to be like. Another factor to consider is whether or not you're perhaps getting some luxuries like a pool or additional bathrooms. And these factors can really have a huge impact on the overall feel of the place. And again, the more add-ons you choose, the bigger the construction bill will be. The bigger the construction bill doesn't necessarily equate to value-adding capital activities either. So be very mindful of what it is that you're actually creating. Also, have a look at what is actually happening outside of your home. What's going on within the suburb? What are the future facilities being planned? What are the employment prospects like? What infrastructure is going in? What mobile internet and TV coverage is available? All important considerations, and all will help with the livability factor and potential growth prospects of your new home. So that now brings us to the end of Stop Staggering and Start. I hate to be the one to do this, but look, I am going to finish this session by providing you with some homework. I know no one ever likes doing homework, but I think it's particularly important since we have gone through a number of aspects that it's time for you to make some decisions. And there's two things that I really want you to be clear on and to make a decision on prior to going ahead and working through the next presentations. That first decision is that I want you to decide now whether or not buying a home is actually right for you now. I think that's particularly important. If it is right for you now, you're going to make the changes that will be necessary in order for you to actually realize that goal of home ownership and, securing your financial future. The second thing that I want you to work out is what your preferences are when it comes to your home. What does it look like? Is it a house? Is it a unit? Is it a townhouse? Make a decision. Visualize the look and the feel of the place. You also need to decide where it is located so you can start concentrating your energies within those local areas. And you have to be very clear on why you are buying it. What do you hope to achieve out of this? And finally, how are you going to make this all possible? Have a think on those few points and then tune in to our next series of presentations where we're going to be discovering part 2 of SMART, which is all about actually making it happen and managing your money to make it happen. Look forward to walking you through it. Bye.